Welcome, I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, Nigerians in South Africa mourn the killing of one of their own over an alleged altercation with the police. Violence rocks inauguration of All Progressives Congress state chairman in Bayelsa as hoodlums shoot sporadically, killing one of the party's loyalists. 3 injured as uncompleted building caves in Kwara, several others trapped. And Rwandan President Paul Kagame is sworn in for a 3rd term in office after a landslide victory at the polls.
And in business news tonight, Nigeria's crude exports expected to drop to 1.72 million barrels per day in October on pipeline disruptions. Nigerian residents are set to continue World Championship on Sunday after 10 days of intensive training. From Abuja, again, members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria protest over continued detention of their leader, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky.
We begin tonight from South Africa, where some Nigerians are concerned about the rate at which Nigerians are killed in South Africa. The killing of a 39-year-old Nigerian man after an altercation with the police in Cape Town, South Africa, is the latest of a string of incidents of this nature, and Uchenna Elo's death adds to a worrying list of Nigerians killed in similar circumstances in the country. The head of Consular and Immigration Matters in South Africa, Mr. Tony Ogbe, was in Cape Town to find out exactly what happened, and he spoke to Channels Television on his return today.
It was yet another unfortunate incident of the death of another Nigerian under circumstances that we consider very disturbing. Similar to what happened in December of 2016, a Nigerian was allegedly strangled to death by a law enforcement agent who suspected that he had swallowed some narcotic substances on citing the police, ostensibly to destroy evidence. It happened on Wednesday, the 16th of August. I have spoken to the police. They wouldn't give any information yet because, according to them, investigations are still ongoing. And until they conclude the investigations, they would not be able to say what exactly was responsible. But they did acknowledge receipt of the report of the incident, and they are working on it, and we are following up with it to ensure that investigations are properly carried out and justice is brought to bear.
Calm has returned to Yenagoa, the Bayelsa state capital, where one person has been confirmed killed during the inauguration of the acting chairman of the All Progressives Congress in the state, Joseph Fafi. Hoodlums believed to be loyal to the immediate past chairman of the party, Tiwe Orumige, allegedly stormed the venue, shooting sporadically to disperse the crowd. The immediate past chairman of the party was expelled for alleged anti-party activities alongside his vice chairman and secretary on July the 25th, 2017. The supporters had trooped out in support of the new leadership, which they said would bring an end to the infighting in the state chapter of the APC.
We as a party, I mean myself, my leader, Mupre Silva, and his teaming supporters, we can never be scared of any gunshot. You can decide to shoot from now till tomorrow, we don't care. We must get our thing done the way we want it as a party, and nobody can intimidate us in this state, I can tell you that. We are ready for any battle.
So I've not seen any hoodlum yet. All I see is party faithfuls. But anybody, whether hoodlums, whether a member of the party or anybody that causes the breach of the peace, we are bound to arrest him.
And at least 3 persons were injured when a 4-story building collapsed in Ilorin, the Kwara state capital. The building, located around Sulugambari Road, which is said to be under construction, caved in earlier today. The injured persons are said to have been rushed to a nearby hospital in Ilorin. Eyewitnesses told Channels Television that carpenters and bricklayers were working inside the building before it collapsed.
People narrowly escaped death, and I think it's a signal. And I had it, and I have to come to the scene of crime. I've seen it, and for now, we're still hearing cracks of the building, and the place is not safe for anyone to go in now. We are trying to see how we can evacuate those residents around the area to leave the area because of any other unforeseen circumstances. There's a tendency that further damage can still occur. So at the moment, my men of the disaster management are on ground to see how we can condor off people from coming around so that we won't record any other losses of death.
Now, building collapse is steadily becoming a nightmare Nigerians have to contend with, as several incidents have been recorded in recent times. Just this week alone, there have been 2 respective cases of collapsed buildings in Imo and Kwara states, resulting in loss of lives and property. While fingers often point to lack of proper oversight by regulatory authorities, our next report chronicles some of the incidents and the factors responsible.
The rubble of yet another building that has come tumbling down, this time around in Ilorin, the Kwara state capital. Affordable housing has proved a challenge for Nigerians, particularly those of the lower income bracket. And even when they're able to find a place to lay their heads, it's like having the sword of Damocles hanging over them. The week began on a tragic note for the residents of number 9 Ebu Street in Owerri, the Imo state capital. Their home came crashing down on them in the early hours of Sunday, August the 13th. 4 of the occupants were killed. It was alleged that the owner of the building, who is at large, had defied both common sense and the authorities in an attempt to pile 2 more floors on a building that was not designed to carry that kind of weight. And while the attempt to achieve 4 stories in Owerri crumbled midway, at number 3 Masses Street on Lagos Island, it was successful with disastrous consequences. The 4-story structure caved in on July the 25th, killing 6 of the occupants. 16 were rescued alive, but highly traumatized. Abuja, the nation's capital, has also not been spared the scourge of walls tumbling down. On May the 23rd, the office complex of the Directorate for Road Traffic Services, under construction in Mabushi, suffered a partial collapse. The structure, meant to be a 5-story building, was still at the 1st-story stage when it started disintegrating. Most of the cases of building collapse witnessed recently have been blamed on structural defects and are known to have happened either owing to negligence by their owners or the failure of the authorities to enforce structural standards. Either way, this man-made disaster has persisted over the years, and a solution to the problem has remained as elusive as ever. With each successive collapse, no lesson seems to have been learned, and one can only hope not to hear about where the next house will fall.
Now, to discuss the spate of building collapse in the country, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the National Publicity Secretary, Building Collapse Prevention Guild, Mr. George Akinola. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Thanks for having me.
Going by what we've seen, this appears to be a national problem now. It's not just happening in one state. You can't say it's just Lagos. What has your guild been able to identify as the root cause?
Really, impunity, lack of supervision, lack of adherence to building standards, and so many other factors. But mainly impunity. People don't follow the law. They take the professionals that are really trained to execute building construction are not being used. The architect is not designing because people give it to people that are not qualified. The structural engineer is not hired. They give it to roadside engineers to just put structures together. So the end result can only be collapse. And of course, materials that are the correct materials, which is supposed to follow the Standard Organization of Nigeria, recommended materials and standards are not being adhered to. So definitely buildings will keep tumbling down.
Well, there's so many professional associations in the country. Apart from your guild, you have engineers and etc. giving advice, and each time we hear another building has collapsed. What is the way around it, beyond just talking about the fact that you've identified the problems?
There has to be more stringent control more stringent control of design, more stringent control of approval processes, more stringent control of construction, more stringent control of the whole building process. If you don't do that, we'll continue to go the way of yesterday. Everything will continue to happen the same way as it has been happening. Because people take laws into their hands, they build on poor soil, they don't do soil tests, they build on places that are not supposed to build, like water, logged areas, without soil tests, without the appropriate foundations. If the foundation is not right, the structure will come down. Like the one that happened in Ilorin, we are familiar because our people are already there. The one that happened in Ilorin happened because the building was already approved to be 4 floors. But the owner went to put up a 5th floor. Exactly.
Did no one notice that was happening? And even when it's approved, is there no monitoring team that can say this is not what was on the approved plan? When you say the owner went ahead, it's strange that happens and it just happens like that.
You would know that we are not the approval agency, neither are we the supervising agency. We are just a collaboration of all the built professionals in the built environment. Architects, engineers, estate valuers, and so on and so forth, in the built environment. So we advise. We are the ones trained to put up these structures. But most times, people bypass the professionals. Now, the government is supposed to put up approval agencies. They're supposed to put up supervising agencies during construction. And during construction, if a building is not properly supervised, not just being there to check what is being done, you have to check the quality of the materials. You have to check the way the materials are being put together. You have to check that the way the building is being put together is in adherence with the designs as done, both by the architects and the engineers. If you don't do it, it's a very stringent series of controls. If you don't do that, the building will always ultimately come down. Because it's science, pure science. And you cannot execute a scientific endeavor the way you would do an artistic endeavor. It will fail.
Do you think the guild should go beyond giving advice? Because obviously, is there some sort of legal backing to the advice that you give? What do you think can be done? Because we don't want to wait for the next one to happen.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Nigeria, it will continue to happen. Why? Because some buildings have been built 10 years ago that did not satisfy the actual processes that they're supposed to satisfy. So they will come tumbling one day. But we as the guild, we have said that we should be involved at every level. All the professionals. Because you see, the government cannot supervise. They don't have enough personnel. Like Lagos State now. In 1 year, there were 48,000 building constructions in Lagos State. Maybe they have less than 500 building supervising professionals in the government agencies. So how can they cover? But we as the professionals, we are in every local government. We are in every cell. In the 57 local government ISCDAs in Lagos State, we're everywhere. You will have the whole complement of all these built environment professionals in every local government. We say the government should exploit our presence and our knowledge and technical expertise so that before, during, and after we are involved in building construction. That way, if the legislation is used to back us, building collapses will be reduced. And that is the advocacy that we have been on for the past 6-7 years.
And what is the first step? If you had to be on such a board or such a committee, what is the first thing you would do?
Well, I will ensure that there is this stringent application of the principles. Fundamental principles of building construction, building procurement must be adhered to. There must be a fundamental adherence. Else, we will have more of the same.
All right, thank you so much. National Publicity Secretary of the Building Collapse Prevention Guild, Mr. George Akinola, for sharing your thoughts on the news at 10 tonight.
My pleasure.
And in part 2, after the break, a general overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, visits President Buhari in London. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.